Hello. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As you can see, we are going to be having a chat with Kevin Logan, but I've absolutely forgotten how we're going to do this. I haven't even asked. I suspect it's going to be over Discord. Where are we? Oh, that means after I remember how to log into Discord. um, oh no, he's doing it over Google. Cool, cool, cool. In that case, before I jump in, I'm gonna go take a quick comfort break, make sure my glass is charged, and then we'll come back and we'll get into this. So we'll see you back in a moment. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so. Oh, hang on. Oh, hang on. Let me get a proper background. Um. Oh, I want my Yorkshire one. I can't have my Yorkshire one on here. Oh well. We'll just pick one at random. Screw it. Tell you what, that's fine. So if I go here, so I'm gonna have to share screen. Hopefully this works. Like I say, I'm doing it through StreamYard. Hopefully this works and it's not echoey. I do forgive me if that's the case, but we shall see. Did I remember to share audio? Because that would be really annoying if I just forget to share audio. Audio. Good. I have to join. Hang on. Oh.
Hello.
All right.
Your hair's green.
I know. It's unfortunate.
No, it looks nice.
It's genetics on my end.
No, it looks nice. It's like, it reminds me of like when you see the kind of the old punk at the back of the venue watching the band. It's like that. It's beautiful. It's just green on the top.
Oh, I know, but yeah. No, I've tried to hang on to my hair as long as possible. Tried to deny my genetic inheritance from my
exactly. The sands of time wait for no man.
I know. Sad. Oh, I always hoped I could have my granddad's hair, but alas, no.
Yeah. Well,
it was my dad's. Instead in that lottery.
Right. So, I mean, how have you been? Because last time we talked was just before the election, wasn't it? So, like over a year now.
Yes, yeah, roughly, yeah. I was very drunk at the time.
That's
correct.
That's fair enough. It's election season is a stressful one.
Yeah, well, I think I've just been out and out that night as well. So yeah, I was quite drunk a bit in that conversation last time.
Fair enough. That's absolutely fine. Yes. So I suppose we'll start off light and say, how do you think it's gone for the Labour Party over the last 12 months?
Yeah, last time I said, it's never such thing as a perfect government, because they've done some things that I don't like. I don't agree with the direction on the trans issues. I think that's a ridiculous way to go down, the direction that they've gone in that. Not the biggest fan of West Streeting, but hopefully in the heat he'll melt like a wax figurine. But there you go. And of course we've got what winter fuel allowance. I sort of wish Starmer had stuck to his guns on that in a bit. In a few respects, I think the main conversation should have and always been around, where do you put the line? If you are going to make it means test it, where do you put the line? Right. I think that's where the conversation should have been. I think that's the conversation they should have always gone for and tried to had. But no, so fortunately you turned on that. I think some of the PIP stuff as well, while the bill, some of the stuff in the bill I actually do quite like. I think the right to try stuff, I think that's really, really good. I think there's a good thing about all the extra money that's going to go into disability stuff in that bill. Obviously quite good. Again, not the biggest fan of cutting people's personal disability payments, but that got stopped by over 100 Labour rebels. So
okay, so I mean, you make a fairly good argument that it hasn't gone well.
Well, that's just some of the stuff that hasn't gone well. Meanwhile, of course.
Okay, by all means, take us through the things that you think have gone well.
So, well, first of all, immediately, Rwanda plan scrapped immediately. I think that was a great first opening move to it.
Okay, what I will say, and I agree with you, by the way, I think it was good to get rid of that. I think the reason why it was gotten rid of has been somewhat overlooked. It wasn't because it was illegal or an abomination. It was because it wasn't the most efficient way of being cruel towards migrants.
I don't think it was even that reason. I think it was just the fact that it was a plan everyone knew was not going to work, and that was going to be spent a lot of money on basically a plan to send 12 people.
Yeah.
Now, immigration is, unfortunately, is the hot button topic. I can tell you that.
It is. It certainly is.
It's
And
frustrating.
I
I don't know if you've had any conversations with locals.
yeah.
But in my area in particular, trying to give people like, hey, why are you focusing on all this, immigration stuff when, this is the case. Most people come here legally. They do follow the rules. They're perfectly fine. People do come here and seek, asylum. The vast majority of them are all asylum seekers. They're not, pretending or anything like that.
Right.
You try to give people these facts, and there really is just a case of, unfortunately, a lot of people just do not care. Which
that is
really
true,
worrying.
and I understand why he doesn't have the same policy as I would have, I suppose, on immigration. But do you think, for instance, that such a hot button topic was served particularly well by kind of pseudo quoting the Rivers of Blood speech?
No, really, to be honest. Again, it wasn't the best thing, to be honest. But I think this is just the fact that their comms in particular, and this has been a constant thing for me, really, even before the election. Labour comms has always been not very good, to be honest. I think, to be honest, Morgan McSweeney needs to go.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
He definitely needs to go. He's done his job. Someone else needs to come in now.
How do you feel, talking of comms, I suppose in a slightly looser sense because it's civil service, but how do you feel about him hiring a former editor of the Sun newspaper and Murdoch press bitch as his communications strategist?
Well, again, interesting take, because I think this is my sort of area of where I work. I work in this sort of particular field. My genuine viewpoint is, you look at the situation we are in now at the moment, who you are trying to push back against. You're trying to push back a lot against this populist rhetoric. Makes quite a bit of sense to hire someone from the Sun. You might not 100% disagree. Disagree with like the person and like where they're coming from, but sort of makes sense to hire maybe someone like that to sort of.
I'm not sure that quite works, because I mean, if populism is about there being a corrupt elite against the people, then surely hiring someone who was the tool of a billionaire who was basically chosen the last dozen prime ministers we've had doesn't seem to me like that's really going to click with the people of Sunderland.
Well, at the end of the day, we'll probably find out. Like I say, his main work is to sort out that messaging, to sort out the comms. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens, and how he changes any of the potential strategies that might go forward, or he might change the messaging or something like that. I think it's still too soon to sort of tell his effects on that.
But I think surely it's not just comms, though. I think you really do have to look at sort of policy as well. The continuation of austerity has been, I think, particularly grotesque. With we'll get into the winter fuel thing because I think you had a particularly contrarian take on that. The attacks on disabled people have been madness, frankly. Having a homeless minister who was just outed as making people homeless, didn't realize it was supposed to be a pro-homelessness minister. Surely this doesn't bring the change that people wanted and voted for.
Well, they did get rid of Section 21 notices.
Right. Okay.
That is, again, another success. They have done that. And I think now the next big battle is, if you look at organizations like Shelter, and the other sort of like renters' rights sort of organizations, they're all now gearing up for a fight to go for rent control. Right. And I am, again, I've said before, I'm a big believer in rent control. I think it's something very, very much that needs to happen. I think there's maybe a policy point where do you give control? Who controls it? Do you make it a national one, so it's controlled by sort of Westminster? We've now got a load of regional mayors. Do you give it to regional mayors to sort of control? Do you give it to local council? And I think there are, for and against arguments for doing that. On that one,
right? But this is sort of pie in the sky, because Keir Starmer's never going to do this. The Labour Party is chock full of landlords. They're not going to institute this kind of thing because it's going to cost them money.
Oh no, I think it's absolutely perfectly reasonable to sort of say you can still push for this type of stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it is, a political party, unless you want to sort of prescribe landlords from being in Parliament, which takes you down a very bad route.
Well, I'm not sure it does. I don't think the idea of divesting from financial investment during the time that you're in Parliament is a particularly extraordinary one. I think it's a conflict of interest, and just saying, "Oh, I have this conflict,"
well, there are rules around
doesn't take the conflict of interest away. It just means it's publicly known because it's on the register of interests.
Yeah, I mean, you have that. You've got all the information on register of interest, and then
but that doesn't stop the fact that dozens of Labour MPs are also have that conflict of interest. They're not going to institute that.
But then you've got to watch how they vote. I mean, they all voted to get rid of Section 21 notices.
Right, okay, and I'm not suggesting they won't do what the party leadership tell them to, but do you think for a second that, given the tenor of the way in which they've governed, that Keir Starmer or Morgan McSweeney or Pat McFadden or whoever's pulling the strings there have any interest in something like that? Because I've never heard them even mention it.
Well, again, I don't know at the moment. I think it's very likely maybe this could happen. I think the campaigning around this stuff is starting to sort of kick off around this thing. Who knows? I don't think it'll happen this Parliament. Maybe anything like that at the moment.
Well, it won't happen at all then, because
I think it could happen. I think it absolutely will happen. I think I've just got more faith in people in Parliament. That's all.
Well, maybe, but I mean, look at the polling. Labour are not going to form a majority government next time. That's pretty obvious at this point. I think it would take a seismic earthquake, the likes of which I can't even imagine.
2029 is a long way. Give it time.
Well, I think it lasts that long, frankly. But yeah, it is a long time. But even if they pull it back a bit, which is, I suppose, reasonable, that's still not a majority territory they're in. Especially with the fact that it's now not a straight two-way fight in most seats anymore.
Well, you say that it could be, minority government, but I think the one party everyone is not really paying attention to at the moment is the Lib Dems. There's been a lot of polling recently that says that the Lib Dems are doing actually really well in a lot of the old Tory areas, but they are also the party that is attracting a lot of dissatisfied Labour people. In fact, they are the biggest attractor of dissatisfied ex-Labour people, according to one recent poll. I think it was last week that came out on that. So any potential Parliament you probably could look at, it might be maybe it could be Keir Starmer and Ed Davey.
Okay, there's a couple of points there, I suppose. It's sort of hypothetical, but whatever. Do you think the Lib Dems want to do the same thing they did last time and get into bed with a political party who might shaft them? And secondly, even if this does happen, I can't imagine that a party less historically progressive than the Labour Party, which is the Lib Dems, are going to want to get on board with something like rent control. I mean, Ed Davey was literally a cabinet minister under David Cameron. This is not a progressive economic person we're talking about.
I mean, he may do. It depends when you start to see this sort of stuff, get called for. And I think when the campaigns start getting really up to speed in rent control, that's when I think you'll start to see who is going to be supporting what and what exactly they're going to be supporting.
I hope you're right. I genuinely do. I think that would be a wonderful thing. But this sort of goes back to I think that one of the cruxes of our disagreement last time as well, is that you seem to think that staying inside the Labour Party and fighting for these things is really going to achieve anything. And I would point to the last year of complete and utter failure to change things for the positive within the Labour Party as an example that they have no interest in changing.
So we have had good changes. So, the Tories made it harder to strike. Labour have made it a lot easier. The Tories, tried to force strikers to work. Labour binned it. Thatcher let landlords chuck you out for no reason with Section 21 notices. Labour has ended that. Labour killed the Rwanda plan in instantly 1 month. If you want to talk about justice,
to be fair, that was
Ireland inquest
okay.
To be free speech, fine stuff.
To be a couple of points I do have to raise. Firstly, the Rwanda policy was already before the election, so that's not a policy of change as such. That was already sort of a pre-existing plan. No one pushed them to that. That was a thing. One of the very few, unfortunately, things he did claim to do and then actually did. And secondly, when it comes to workers' rights, I mean, the bill having been watered down is very disappointing. But secondly, even though, like you say, I think it has been made slightly easier, you still have the slip of the tongue, I suppose. You still have the Labour Health Secretary calling for healthcare workers to cross a picket line.
Yeah, again, I don't agree with West Street, so you're not going to get any disagreement with me on that.
Okay, but you seem to disagree with so much, and yet want to stay in a political party that seemingly don't represent you.
But they do more than they don't. There are lots of progressive groups in Labour. I think we sort of said this before. I mean, there's still, again, momentum. There's Open Labour. There's the Socialist Campaign Groups, Compass, Fabian Society, Labour for the Green New Deal.
Right, but the Labour left have been gutted. Let's be honest. You've got, I mean, is it 12 MPs? The last count I had have been suspended, and they've all been left MPs. Really, it seems the kind of factionalism of the pre-election days hasn't really stopped.
Well, that's political party. That's how normal things go. There will always be, factionalism. I think Starmer has.
But I was told under Corbyn this was Stalinism. You were gulagging people. This is a terrible thing.
Well, again, I didn't agree when this happened to Corbyn either. I think he's been a bit too heavy-handed, to be honest. I think he's not desperately, but he's tried to sort of, I think, enforce parliamentary discipline, particularly after, what God knows how many years of bizarre, strange Tory governments that we've had.
But exclusively by getting
discipline, I think there's a sense of discipline. Yeah. I think there is kind of an importance to it when it comes to that.
Right, but exclusively by getting rid of the foremost sort of left-wing MPs that were sort of left in Parliament.
But you still have lots of left-wing MPs in Parliament.
You have some, certainly, but I mean, again, his answer isn't ever to go after the kind of centre of the party or the right of the party. It's exclusively his guns are aimed at Diane Abbott and those sorts of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So that's so the idea that you can push him to the left when, like, if this guy was any more right wing,
you campaign for stuff. You campaign for stuff you want, and doing it within a party is always the best idea to do it, particularly now that this is the party in power.
Well, in office. I don't like the term in power. That suggests a domination, and they are our servants, not our masters. But that's a slightly different digression. Okay, so we have to get on to, I think, Keir Starmer's foreign policy.
Yep.
I think we largely agree on Ukraine. I don't think that needs to even be gone into particularly.
No, I'm not looking forward to what happens in Alaska. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, it looks like it's very unpleasant. But by and large, I think we agree, so we can put that to one side. The other horrible issue, of course, is what's going on in Israel/Palestine right now. Are you comfortable with the Keir Starmer/David Lammy acquiescence to genocide?
Well, they've put sanctions on, Jewish settlers. They've actually been quite diplomatic, even though, again, I don't think people want them to be a lot harsher. Diplomatically, when you look at what they're saying, it's pretty much, hey, you need to stop this. We've got the recognition of Palestine coming up in September, which is, again, what a lot of people have been calling for quite some time. So that's finally happening.
Right, but why delay till September, and why caveat it with if Israel agrees to a ceasefire?
Because I've said this before. We in the UK do not have that a
Okay,
lot of
but
leverage.
well, I think that's actually an argument more for doing it because again, I don't think we have any real leverage. I think this ultimately is if the president of the United States decides to do a thing. We aren't the global superpower we once were. We're not. We can't call the shots in Palestine
Yeah,
as
we
we
don't
did a
have a lot of
century ago.
leverage.
Yeah. So, but the point therefore is holding it up as leverage when it isn't leverage, because realistically they don't care. They'll make a big noise about it because, of course, Israel always makes a big noise about anything that's vaguely against them. But just do it then. Just
But
do it because it
that's the
shouldn't be
point of
used as
soft
leverage
power.
when it's not leverage. It's not realistically even soft power. All it is using a thing that should be a right of a sovereign people, the Palestinian people, to have a state, and using it as some sort of bargaining chip with the government that's currently killing them.
What else do we do then?
Well, do the righteous thing. Stop
And
defending them at the
Israel
UN
continues?
constantly.
I mean, I still think that Israel is still going to continue regardless.
Oh, probably so. And I
But at
don't think
least
for a second.
we've used
But we could
now.
do right. What we could do is say, okay, they're killing the people, they're starving them to death. Shall we stop sending them weapons? Just we can't. This is not conscionable. It would not have been okay to send the Rwandan people weapons during their genocide. It would not have been okay to arm the Germans during their genocide. This is not a remotely acceptable thing to do. It's also not acceptable to use spy planes from RAF Akrotiri over southern Gaza as well, which has been happening and continue to happen.
But what are those spy planes being used for?
Well, we don't really know, and that's sort of part of the
how do we
problem.
not know that those spy planes are like the big reason why we don't know about all these atrocities?
Wang, are you suggesting that they're doing this as news gathering?
I think, in my opinion, from what I have seen, I think these surveillance flights are more being used in basically an attempt to sort of say, we are watching Israel, we can see what you're doing.
Right, but they're also clearly
Again,
communicating
power.
that information to Israel. So, like, this isn't. Again, that's a nonsensical argument because we're literally giving the information we get
Israel has
from
used
Israel
information
to
given to them
Israel
by the UN.
Right, but we don't have to acquiesce to that. We don't have to do that. There's no we haven't signed an agreement with them where we have to give them any information. We have decided of our own goodwill that we're going to do that. Why? When they're clearly using some of that information to kill innocent people.
Again, don't agree with it.
So again, it's another thing that's, I would think would be a deal breaker. If I was friends with a person who was like sending information to a murderer, I'd say, you know what, mate, I don't want to hang out anymore.
It's a bit extreme example. That
It's not extreme in the slightest because a murderer could only kill so many people. Benjamin Netanyahu is swimming in Palestinian blood, and apparently, Keir Starmer's absolutely fine
not a
with
deal
that.
breaker because there's more important things to do on here in the country as well to do. I would rather again get more stuff done here in the country, campaigning within the Labour Party, and also push for again more help for the Palestinians on that front than be on the outside. And that's just how I feel. That's how I see it.
Okay, so what about so you want to focus on national policy, internal policy. How about the Labour Party's attack on trans people's rights?
Yeah,
Are you comfortable with needing to go,
agree with that.
needing a driver's license to go for a shit?
Again, don't agree with that.
So again, it's a fundamental undermining of British people's rights by a government that you still somehow support. It doesn't make sense to me.
You still support a government even though you disagree with them.
Right, but this isn't some minor disagreement about tax and spend policy. This is they're undermining the rights of people abroad and they're undermining British people's rights as well.
Yeah, you can still push to sort of help those people from within the Labour Party.
But it's gotten worse. You clearly can't do so effectively.
But again, you can still
you can't do so effectively because
push for them.
If you could, you would have. I don't deny your intention. I don't deny. I'm not for a second suggesting that you're bullshitting me here. You genuinely want this and are fighting for it, but it's been so ineffectual to the point of basically making no real difference, and it's gotten significantly worse in significant areas, that it doesn't seem to me that the Labour Party under the current leadership are not just capable but willing,
and that's
even
why you
negotiating that
the party to push for, to push for that.
Right, but you are in the party and you are
pushing
for
that,
and it's gotten you nowhere.
You still got to do it. you know, you don't win every
We-
battle. You've got to keep on getting
What
back on the
battle?
horse and keep riding
Okay.
it.
What battles have you won?
So again, we've got rid of Section 21 notices, which I think are good. You've got most really. So the stuff just from the housing stuff that we've got public ownership of rail by the end of this parliament. The NHS is definitely
Well,
not
public
the
ownership
situation
of the
it was.
franchises. We don't own the rolling stock, of course. That's still private.
Yeah, well, again, hey, one step at a time.
Why one step at a time? Why? Why not? Why not do the whole thing? We clearly need to.
But
it's a failed
why
system.
the rush? Why?
Because
why
people
the
are alive now. People are alive
can,
now.
It takes
there
time
is the
to do
will.
a lot of this stuff, though.
There is the will from the
prefer
British
to do it.
people. Even fucking Tories want the nationalisation of the rail because it's clearly failed.
Yeah,
and yet the Labour Party, the supposedly socialist party,
by the end of the parliament, will be nationalised.
Well, no, again, the franchises will be nationalised. The rolling stock,
and that will still be good. That will still be good when
it will be slightly better, but it will still be private companies potentially holding us hostage over the rolling stock.
So
our people buying train tickets will still be funding the trains in Belgium.
It's either everything or nothing. There is no.
No. I'm not suggesting that this isn't a better situation than it was before, but it's this kind of tinkering at the edges, small mindset, which I think has beset this entire government.
But why step forward one step at a time?
No, I'm not suggesting don't do anything. I'm suggesting you could and should do the obvious thing, which is just nationalise that entire system because it has failed under privatisation. Which, look, it should be an open goal for a Labour leader. Okay, but they're not going to get into the next election because they've been so timid at best and frankly terrible at worst that people hate them. Look at the numbers. His personal rating is less than herpes at this point. It's ridiculous. That's a joke, by the way, but you know what I mean. Like the Labour Party's polling numbers right now are really very, very bad, right? To the point where I think you did a stream the other. No, not you. Sorry, Graham and Phil did a stream the other day talking about whether Keir Starmer should be gone. Now, I don't think they're going to, and I don't think that was necessarily a sensible suggestion. But the fact that Labour Party people are having those discussions tells you that not all is right, and you've only been in power for a year. Sorry, office for a year.
Well,
whatever.
They might change leadership. That is entirely possible. I think that would be fine. Again, it's not guaranteed.
Who would you prefer?
Well, Angela Rayner might be quite good. I think Angela Rayner would be a really good PM. Okay. Clive Lewis. That will be fun if he throws his hat in the ring. that will be very good, I think. My own MP again, Dan Jarvis. He's been talked about before, putting his hat in the ring in previous elections. You know, I think there's a lot of candidates you could talk about that would be good.
Okay, and what do you think the likelihood is of them changing tack?
I suppose it will be maybe 2026 when we see that. I think it's going to depend on the results of the local elections there and the Welsh Senate elections. Okay.
What do you make of Andy Burnham potentially?
Yeah, Andy Burnham again, but he's going to get in Parliament.
I mean, I think of a couple of
again, Andy Burnham would be really good. I do think Andy Burnham would be really good as well. But like I say, once he's in Parliament, absolutely. But his term, I think, finishes. Is it 27 or 28? I think his term ends.
Yeah, he's got a bit of time.
Something like that. Yeah, so he does got a bit of time, but then you've got to try and get a by-election to happen potentially as well if you want to get him in Parliament.
Before the number of MPs being fired by all parties, whether it be Reform or Labour or Tory, there are plenty of by-elections.
Yeah, there's plenty of by-elections. There's always plenty of by-elections, although there's a bit extra with the Reform people.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah, they've gone from 5 to 4 to 5 to 4 MPs. Yeah, they've elected 6 and they've got 4 of them. So that's a third they've lost.
If you want chaos, and I generally say this, if you want real chaos, have a look at what's going on in these reform control councils.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. Warwickshire next door to me. Warwickshire is absolutely insane. Don't put a 19-year-old
Yeah.
in charge of a £1 billion fucking council. It's
Did
ridiculous.
you see the vote on that?
No. What's this?
The vote on it was insane. So it basically came down to a tied vote. It was 23 versus 23.
Right.
And at that point, under the rules, chairman gets to decide. Who's the chairman? It's a reform guy.
Oh,
So of course he's going to go with the reform. We actually had one of the guys, Councillor Conditor, on from Warrington a couple of weeks back from the Green Party. We had him on to talk about
from Warrington.
Going to Warrington, yeah.
I
think he's a
Warwickshire.
For, not Warrington, yeah. Sorry, I get these two places confused all the time. So,
no, that's fair. And I was wondering. I was like, that's not anywhere near Warwickshire. That's okay. Yeah. No,
yeah. No, he's Councillor for Nuneaton.
Nuneaton, lovely place. Yeah.
So so we had a good sort of conversation about that, but it is crazy and insane.
I'll have to check that out,
I think he is.
Well, and you have Andrea Jenkins doing her thing as well. Yeah.
I mean, he also said there was apparently some guy from like Reform HQ in the room as well.
Wow, that's not very Gestapo at all.
Yeah, it's very, I think, clear to me he is being puppeted. I mean, also, did you see his? Well, we won't talk about it because you can get in trouble because it is again contempt of court. But yeah, his comments he made in a recent appearance with Nigel Farage. Potentially got him in trouble, so that could be interesting if that all decides to start kicking off. But yeah, this is interesting time there for sure.
Well, this is sort of my contention, and I think this is why I wanted to talk to you, broadly speaking, because I think you made a video which I'd responded to and sort of watched on stream about. I think it was something to do with the Corbyn party, the new thing, and how that was potentially going to let reform in. Now,
I'm not 100% sure that it might do, but again, it depends how the vote goes. Depends how the vote gets split.
Well, there's certainly a chance that they're going to take a fair amount of votes off Labour in traditional heartlands. There's no doubt about that. But my contention, I think, with you and with people like yourself who've made similar points, is that ultimately the Labour Party, if it loses the next election, will have deserved to lose the next election on right. Now, that is not to say that reform are going to be good, because I'm genuinely worried about them. But you'll have essentially not provided the change you promised and lost on your own merits. Because ultimately, it's not splitting the left vote when Keir Starmer isn't on the left.
I think it's more about splitting the vote overall. I mean, if you look at the left vote in general in the UK, I think we again talked about this last time. There's that chart that is something like how you divide voters up, and it's like 25% on the right, 25% on the left, and then in the middle you've got the massive like 35% who consider themselves centrist.
I think that's a rather old school way of looking at it. I think things have polarized in the last 20 years.
Again,
certainly post Brexit, I think.
Well, the last time that was done, I think it was 2019.
Right.
And actually, the centrists went from 30% to 35%.
Right.
So, you know, we are unfortunately outnumbered by centrists, like it or not. And you've got to work with them. You've got to appeal to them as well.
Well, that's fine, but it seems to me that the party, like Keir Starmer came out and said, if you don't like the changes we've made, the door is open, you can leave. So people left. And now they're being chastised by people for having left. To quote one anonymous source, I think it is at Labour HQ, they wanted to shake off the fleas. Okay, well, the fleas aren't going to vote for you then, are they?
Well, that's how voting works. You know, if you don't like the party, don't vote for it.
Well, exactly, but that's the point. Then you'll be chastised as, oh, you're letting reform in. No. If you lose, it's because more people wanted to vote for reform than vote for you.
The thing is, it's a hypothetical at the moment. We'll see what happens when 2029 happens.
Well, no, absolutely. Yeah.
If there is, and there are seats where another party could have won, it might not even be necessarily Labour. It could be the Lib Dems. Maybe it could even be Green Party potentially.
Yeah.
What if it pulls votes away from them and stop?
Okay.
Them
well, you didn't give the left any reason to vote for you. You literally said that they could leave. Not you. Keir Starmer said that you could leave. So why would they vote for you?
And I think it comes down to voting itself. I think at the next election there is going to be very, very clear that we both want a reform government.
Okay.
You might have to not vote for the party you necessarily want to vote for if you don't want a reform government.
Okay, but I've been used to people saying the same thing about the Tories, right? So they used to say you have to vote Labour to keep the Tories out, and there was a certain power to that, a pull factor.
Again, it wasn't just the Tories; it was the Lib Dems as well.
Well, yeah, exactly.
That's why tactical voting was important. The big thing is data at the end of the day, and it's getting data and that information out to the people in those constituencies, those area. This is the party you need to vote for.
But in saying now that you're you have to vote for us to stop reform, is that in a sort of way a sort of tacit admission from the Labour Party that they have become the small c Conservative Party in the British structure?
Again, I don't think they have really become like the small c Conservative Party, but I'm sure you'll disagree with me. But I don't think they have. I think
they've continued a number of their sort of austerity type policies, haven't they?
Well, we'll see.
The 2-child benefit cap was a very easy open goal for them, and they didn't bother.
Yeah,
they kept that cruel Tory policy.
The upcoming budget is, I think, going to be interesting. There's talks now of taxing gambling companies.
Right.
Okay,
I think that's fine. I think that
would be a very moral good for society if you start taxing the gambling companies. There is increased calls now for a wealth tax coming from within Labour. I think that is very, very good to see.
How likely do you think that is, given, let's say, his propensity for taking money from rich people and changing policy on that basis?
That all depends again on the support that comes for supporting that policy, which again I will support, and I will write to my MPs.
Right, but it doesn't really, does it? Because again, there's massive support even amongst Tory voters. There's there is a majority of people who want to full nationalisation of the railways, and they don't do that. So clearly, what the people want, or even what the party want, seems irrelevant to what Downing Street does. Lord Ali seems to have far more sway than 70 million Britons.
Well, again, if you want it, you've got to campaign for it.
Right, but you don't achieve these things within the Labour Party. That's clear. They've made that very obvious that they're not interested in making these progressive changes.
Nationalisation by the end of this, it's not
partial nationalisation.
Partial nationalisation.
True, but even the Tories had started the nationalising or taking in-house of the franchises, so it's not like that's a particularly radical or progressive policy. The Tories were starting that. Now, whether they'd have gone all the way that the Labour Party have, who knows? But frankly,
again, I doubt they would have.
Well, I mean, who knows? If a majority of their voters wanted it, it's not impossible, I suppose.
And that's where it comes down to. It comes down to, supporting the policies that you want. You don't necessarily have to agree 100% with the party to be a member of it.
But I brought up a lot of, I think, very big issues which you just say, well, I disagree with that, which is fine. You can disagree with that. But if you disagree with so many very core parts of public policy, I don't know why you think the Labour Party is your home, because it clearly isn't.
Because that's the party that is in power, and that's the party that I still believe is again very, very progressive. There's lots of still very progressive MPs in there.
In what areas can I ask are they progressive?
Okay, so you want to look at what happened yesterday, because what happened yesterday was quite actually interesting. Okay. The Labour for PR came out yesterday and said that, thanks to, once again, their campaigning and they're pushing for it, that a push for changing the voting system dominated the national policy forum.
Okay.
Which is good, because again, I think we can both agree we want to change the sort of the voting system. Doing that type of thing, doing that campaigning, getting it into the national policy system is good. You've now got the old parliamentary group of like 120 something, maybe a bit slightly bit bigger than that, of MPs for pushing for voting reform, not only just from Labour. In fact, a vast majority of them, 50% of them, are from Labour, but largest party. So that's good. but yeah, we want to see, stuff like that. That's sort of the stuff you've got to do. It's sort of the stuff you've got to keep on
That's
campaigning for. You've got to keep on pushing for it
okay,
time and time again.
but even in terms of reform of constitution and all that, that you haven't managed to make them more progressive, and they've gotten worse. The original plan was to get rid of the House of Lords. That was scrapped. They said they were going to have interim.
They have got rid of all the hereditary peers.
Well, exactly. They've said they're going to be there's going to be temporary heritage.
But, and now we're getting the commission on what to do, like what we're going to do with the House of Lords. And one of the options
firstly,
to the commission is complete. Like,
and we'll wait and see on that. But like he's continued the same policy that every prime minister falls into, of being sort of against the Lords at first because they stand in the way of the elected chamber, and then stuffing it with your mates. Fangam Debonair springs to mind. For
the Lords is I generally think when you look at sort of wanting to reform the Lords, I think it's a lot more difficult task than I think people give it. I don't think
you could try.
It's going to be sort of as easy. I really do want sort of them to sort of push for this. I've said before that if we do want to change our voting system, I think the real target we should be going for, or at least most campaigners group go solely and focus on Westminster. I think we should be looking at House of Lords, because House of Lords, across all parties, is needs reform. Even the Lords themselves agree that the House of Lords needs reform. There was a really cool article a couple of years ago about Lords discussing House of Lords reform and how frustrated they are with the fact that they themselves cannot agree on reform.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem, and I think this goes to the core of why the Labour Party's issue is essentially it's outsourcing of policy to quangos. How many commissions have been set up? How many inquiries? How many boards of inquest? Like, it just have a policy and try and get it through. You have a massive majority in the Commons. Now, I'm not saying that getting it through the Lords is necessarily that easy, which is part of the reason you need to stop the reform, stop the Lords from being an undemocratic.
I agree with you on that. My biggest sort of disappointment is I really want them to be a heck of a lot more brave using their majority. One thing that again frustrates me was going back to the winter fuel allowance stuff.
Yeah, we did want to get onto this because your thing was, I think, the exact opposite of my point. You said that you thought you would hope they'd stick to their guns with the initial policy that was incredibly unpopular.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe the winter fuel allowance should be means tested.
Why?
It is very, very obvious there are a lot of pensioners who just really, so we say, well off as not to need the winter fuel allowance. And I think giving them that is a waste of money. I think we can agree on that.
Right, but as is always the case with means testing, there are a number of issues. Firstly, there's the kind of weird bureaucratic element of it, where you often end up not saving all that much at all because you have to employ so many more people to do the means testing. Secondly, you can have people fall through the cracks.
The means testing, from what it was, from what I wanted it to be, was how much, like, where the money that you are receiving. And I think that's sort of where it should be. We saw, of course, a lot of people sign up to pension credit,
right? But some don't.
This. And again, some don't. Some don't get it.
Some people are going to fall through the cracks.
Well, no. Again, I think that should be where the conversation should have always been. Where is that line? Where do you draw that line? And that's the conversation that didn't happen.
Okay, but the problem you have is. Attacking the universality of it means, I think, undoubtedly there are going to be people fall through the cracks. And frankly, I don't really care if Mick Jagger gets 500 quid for his heating, as long as all of the poor people who need it get it. And secondly, you can tax it back later. You don't have to do this weird bureaucratic, like, penny pinching nonsense thing of like, and of course it's just an awful communications nightmare. But one of the very first things they did, and it became the story of the kind of late summer into the autumn, was this, they want to freeze granny, which wasn't the plan, but that's what it got spun at.
That's what
because
it became,
again, it's the Tory press. That's what they're going to do. So don't give them the own goal. Don't give them that don't give them that ammunition. Just have it as a universal benefit. So all pensioners don't freeze. That's a good thing. and then tax it back from, Mick Jagger or Rod Stewart, or,
But-
rich people who don't need it.
The-
You can tax that money back later. It's not a problem.
This to me once again shows, unfortunately, that the block, the voting block in particular, for old people is still incredibly powerful.
Ludicrously so.
Because you've got the infamous 2017 election, which became the winter fuel allowance general election, if you remember that.
Yes.
That almost defeated, Theresa May.
Yeah, was it
and
the death tax thing?
Yeah. You've got again this, and it worries me for the fact that what if you want to, for example, undo the triple lock? You look at a lot of economists, experts that are out there that are like, the triple lock is going to be quickly become very, very much unsustainable.
Yeah.
You need to undo it. What happens then when you try to undo it and you get this kind of backlash, especially when you've got a party like Reform, which at the last local elections, they pretty much ran on the fact, going around doing all their leafleting, oh yeah, if you vote for us, they'll undo the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah.
It worries me how
absolutely
strong that voting block is.
People forget. I mean, when we talk about the ballooning benefits bill, the vast majority of benefits are beyond working age benefits, I think is the terminology or whatever. Basically pensions, right? That's the vast majority of it. And yet the only thing that never, ever gets touched is pensions, because you can't, because it's electoral suicide.
Yeah.
Because old people vote.
Yeah. I think that's why I wish they had stuck to their guns. I think it should have been means tested. I still think it should have been means tested.
But again, that's people are going to fall through the cracks, man. It just seems like
where's that crack? How much income?
The number of
that crack happens.
Okay, but the number of people, and it was already admitted by them, the number of people that didn't apply for pension credit, that would have gotten it but didn't for whatever reason. Older people are set in their ways. They're not necessarily very good with filling in forms, or they just don't want to. They just don't want to apply for this thing. And if you set it at that, it means that people who are poorer, who do need that extra help, aren't going to get it. And it doesn't matter to me whether it's
they were still
10 people or 10,000.
Because the whole point of the winter fuel allowance is to make sure that poor pensioners get that allowance. And I think that's where, again, you've got to look at it and go, right, where does the line need to be drawn? Where does that benefit need to be?
But it's so much easier.
If it is hard, how easy can we make it?
It's so much easier to just tax the tiny amount, because when we're talking about very rich people who don't need it, if they're not going to heat a mansion or whatever, the amount of tax extra you would have to put on them is minuscule. Just do that.
As you just said, how can they tax it back when you just said doing that will be electoral suicide?
Well, no, because again, you're doing it to like a tiny number of people. We're talking about like a few thousand people who probably aren't going to vote Labour anyway.
I mean, you can just see the headlines already.
Well, it can't possibly be worse. It cannot possibly be worse than what actually happened, which was he wants to freeze Granny was the only thing that was talked about for months.
Yeah,
because they went off on parliamentary vacation, and so the only story in town was they're freezing Granny. They're freezing Granny. So how the hell was they're taxing Mick Jagger a worse headline for them? How can that possibly be a worse headline?
Again, it was always the conversation should and always have been, this is where the line needs to be. People aren't gonna freeze if you need that credit, and you are
no, people could freeze. Whereas if you just have it universal, they won't.
But again, I don't think it should be universal.
Why? Why does it matter? Also, like, just on a basic level, I don't really give a fuck particularly whether, like I say, rich people get this thing, as long as everyone gets it. That's the point of universality, really, I suppose, is that no one falls through the cracks.
Again,
and it saves such a small, like tiny bit of nitpicking nonsense. It was going to save at best 1.5 billion, and then we announced 2 months ago an extra 80 billion on defense. Like, come on, no one's buying this nonsense.
But okay, well, that's money that could have gone into other things for pensioners. It could have gone into a lot of other potential areas.
The 80 billion, yeah, no, I quite agree. It could have, yes. It could have got into a lot of things, and it won't.
Well, we're
It'll
probably
go
going to
into
have to really, unfortunately, spend a lot more in defense if, thanks to Donald Trump, and depending what happens on Friday. So yeah, we are probably going to have to spend, unfortunately, a lot more on defense. Like it or not.
Okay, but then, like, if that's the case, like, what are we defending as a nation exactly? Like a nation of freezing pensioners and stuff. Like, no one buys that you have to like scrape back this 1.5 billion when they're giving, was it 3 billion a year to Ukraine for 100 years, which is a weird bill. That's a weird fucking thing to sign, but whatever. Like, people aren't going to put up with that. And the problem is you give a completely open goal to reform because they're saying, oh, look, he's giving 3 billion to Vladimir Zelensky and freezing pensioners. You're giving him perfect, almost like scripted. If he could write Labour policy to best suit his narrative, it would be stuff like this.
Again, I still think should have been means tested. I think this is just a disagreement we're not going to get over, to be honest. But
okay, no, that's fair enough. Okay, so I know you've got to go reasonably soon. So if we sort of wrap up with what do you hope to achieve with Labour, say, over the next year?
Sort of for me, obviously next year, local elections going to be super important. Super important. I don't want a reform council. To be honest, if you've been keeping an eye on what's been going on in these reform councils, they're doing nothing. And that might sound like, a good thing that they're doing nothing, but trust me, they're doing nothing. That means there's grant money not being done, decisions not being taken. Eventually, they're going to come up into some serious problems because, they have to make a decision. And, well, they're not there to make the decision. So me sort of personally, I'm going to be out in my local area doing basically what I can to sort of do that. I think Labour in my area has done a really good job recently in the town square and what they've done on that area. I think it's been absolutely fantastic. I think the 2030 plan is great. I think it's a great direction to sort of take the town. There's some community wealth building going on in all that as well. So that's where I'm going to sort of be doing my efforts for the next sort of year or so.
So not so much about trying to change Labour's policy.
To me, my immediate threat is the local elections and not having a reform council.
No, that's fair, but like, is that short-termism at the detriment of the long-term turnaround in Labour's fortunes? Because again, the numbers are going in one direction, and it's not positive.
Well, again, 2029 is a long way away.
Well, true, but next year isn't, and the year after isn't.
We'll have to see. I still think it's still way too early to be making any kind of predictions for like the 2029 election. I think it's way too far off.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you have elections in local councils and stuff basically every year, and you have by-elections as well. And the Labour Party not facing wipeout in some areas.
No, not in all the areas.
Well, no, I didn't say all. I said some of the areas.
Yeah, again, depends which area. That's where sort of, particularly for me, like I say, in my local area, I really do not want a reform council, purely because I think the current Labour administration have really gotten the town into a really good state at the moment. They've got some really good.
Is there a possibility, like a realistic possibility of reform? So I don't need to dox yourself.
So again, unfortunately, my town decided to have a referendum because we used to do 2 tranches of elections. So we've got a total of 63 councillors, I believe it is, something around there. And we do them in 2. So you'd have 30 and then 2 years, another 30. We've now decided to go, okay, what do you people want to do? And the good people of Barnsley voted for all 63 at once. So,
right. Okay.
My best sort of effort is really sort of making sure I'm getting out there. Really getting out there, door knocking, and making sure that people are aware of like what they're candidates have been up to, what they've been doing. I'm sure you're aware of yourself just how bad like perception is of local government in general.
Yes.
It's very, very bad.
Well,
A lot of councillors get a lot of stick that they do not deserve.
well, I mean, unfortunately, you're talking probably to a denizen of the wrong city at the moment, because we've got a Labour council currently at war with a union, which means we're now swimming in trash.
Oh yes, yeah.
So that's very pleasant. Honestly, the decade of renewal doesn't feel very good so far in Brom, I have to say.
Well, I am all about hopium and hope. I know I annoy a lot of people about this, but I don't mind. My politics and my sort of view on politics is always to be sort of hopeful. I think you get more done looking at things through that area and lens of politics, and it keeps you going in the long run. So,
But when does hopium become copium?
It's never hopium to begin with. I think you've got to be active. I think you've got to get out there. I would always encourage my audience, write to your MP. Commit to writing to them at least like 3 times a year about a topic, about a subject, something that matters to you. Go and see them in the surgeries. MPs get very few visitors in their surgeries. Go to your local town council. Speak to your local councillors.
Okay, but what about
Get
if your
involved
local
in politics?
what about if your local MP is Nigel Farage and he's never been there?
Well, well,
You
thank you
can't
the
go to
local
a
Labour
surgery that
Party.
doesn't exist.
Thank you to the local Labour Party. They've actually managed to keep some of their local offices they had in that area still running, and they're actually providing all that information that Nigel Farage's office and what they should be providing to the people of Clacton.
So
So
that's positive, because
yeah,
he's been to America more than he's ever been to Clacton.
yeah,
So,
I'd be very interested to see what happens to Nigel. He's been putting a lot of pressure and effort on Kent.
yeah.
I don't know if you saw the guy who got fired.
No.
So there was Nigel made a grand trip to Kent a couple of months back, and immediately after, the day later, all the sort of ministers got basically given their marching orders. The guy who was in charge of, I believe it's roads and highways, said, "No, I'm not going to do that," and basically was told to if you stand up and leave, you will be fired. To which they then put out an interesting press release of, "Oh, don't worry, he left on very amicable terms." To which he then replied, "No, I was never left on any amicable terms. I was ambushed and in a very, very heated meeting," which is again fascinating if you want to go read about that. But yeah, I think he's putting a lot of pressure on Kent, and it wouldn't surprise me if at the next election he changed constituencies down to Kent.
Well, he's fought in Kent before, of
Yeah.
course. Oh God, what's the seat called? It doesn't really matter. Anyway, he's fought a Kent seat in the past. But this is sort of the problem I have with, or one of the functional problems I have, is very Trumpian in that he doesn't want to put any work in. Now, in the American system, it's slightly different. I think you can sort of get by having a president that's sort of incapacitated. One thinks of late stage Reagan for an example of that, or indeed late stage Biden, I suppose. Whereas in Britain, you need to be on the ball. And he doesn't like doing once a month meetings in Clacton. You have to do several meetings every day as Prime Minister.
Do you know how the story of Lee Anderson, how he survived?
Didn't he dig his way out of shit with a spoon or something? Oh no, that was Shawshank Redemption. Sorry, wrong movie.
Well, everyone remembers, of course, he got fired, from the Conservatives, and then he went and joined Reform. And people remember he went absolutely almost radio silence. He sort of almost disappeared off the radar for like a good period. That was because he actually went and started doing work in his local constituents and really started like getting in there and working in his local area. That's how he managed to survive. Whether Farage will be able to pull that same miracle out of a hat, who knows? But
well, I don't know. He seems he's rather a louche character. He likes to drink and party and not turn up for work. which isn't a great look for a prime minister, really.
There's already been a couple of videos of, I think, people have gone around actually interviewing. They're not happy.
Yeah,
they're not happy.
Well, they shouldn't be, because regardless of what, the politics of an individual member of parliament, they should care.
Yeah.
They should try. They should put in the work. You're paying them £80,000 a year. No one forced them to do this. This is something you have to work for. The least you can do is put in some effort.
Thank you so much for saying that. People should care. People should care about who their MP is, their councillors, etc. And a lot of people don't. I think it's a great missed opportunity that candidate selection I think is not opened up. I do understand sometimes maybe having to parachute people in. Maybe there isn't a good enough candidate in the area, etc. But surely then you can train people to be better candidates. Maybe get them on the council, see how they do as a local councillor. A lot of all this type of stuff that is, I think really important to sort of democracy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll end on that amicable note and say, thank you for coming on.
Sure, no problem. Anytime.
This wasn't too confrontational.
No, it was all right now.
Yeah, and we'll maybe convene in another year and see how things have gone.
I will bang the gavel. I will bang the gavel. Yes, set the next AGM date.
Will do. Thank you for coming on, Bowler Hatman. Much love.
Cool, excellent. No, like I say, thank you for having me. Like I say, anytime. I'm more than happy to have conversations and anything like that. I am unfortunately from Yorkshire. I am cursed with wanting to have conversations and speak and talk with people. So it is a curse and a cross that I have to carry.
Well, indeed so. And we'll speak another time.
Cool.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
See ya. That was reasonably pleasant. What did people think? What did people think? I wait now. the stream lag when you say that, and you're like, yeah. But no, no, I did quite enjoy that. I will say this now. I have actually quite enjoyed both my conversations with Kevin. I do think they have been quite good. I think they've been quite productive. Again, we don't necessarily agree with everything, but that's fine. To be honest, that is just the nature of politics. You can still be civil and speak to each other even when you do have a disagreement. So no, overall I think that was pretty good. Is this where we now pull out the Durham Scrutiny Committee meeting and start watching that? Oh, but overall, like I say, a good conversation. No, but thank you very much for joining me. Like I say, this evening, and like I say, if people ever want to have a chat about anything like that, I am more than happy to sort of have these, conversations. So, as always, thank you very much, everyone, for watching this evening. Oh, pardon me. That's because I wolfed down my tea a little bit too quickly. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And yes, we will see you all next time.